This is it. This is the year Nebraska finally returns to the postseason. With the team that they have and the schedule that they have, it has to be. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. We're so glad you could join us today to break down the Nebraska Cornhuskers. This is the year. I feel it. This is the year they get back to a bowl game for the first time since 2016. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home of our expert picks, some of the best spread picks in the entire country for one of the lowest prices in the entire country. Go take advantage of those guys. We want you to sign up, become a member of our GE Nation. Also, check out our exclusive weekly newsletters. Want you to sign up for those too to become a member of our GE Nation to get tons of extra analysis and insight and content all season long. So, Nebraska. God, it's been such a rough stretch. I mean, pick your stat. Pick your miserable stat if you're Nebraska. Is it no bowl game since 2016? Is it the 25 one-possession losses just over the last 5 years, including 5 one-possession losses last year, including their last 4 games last year? They had 5 wins. They were 1 win away from a bowl game and lost each of the last 4 games by 1 possession. Is that the miserable stat? I mean, so many heartbreakers for Nebraska over the years, from the Scott Frost era to the beginning now of the Matt Rule era. They've been so close, unable to get over the hump. But this could be the year for multiple reasons. One of which is they've got Matt Rule, who always takes that big step in year 2. During his time at Temple, his first year there, he went 2-10. But in year 2, they were 6-6. At Baylor, his first year, 1-11. The next year, 7-6. Nebraska, 5-7 last year. Do they take that leap to the postseason? All they got to do is just get to 6 wins. We take a look at the offense, guys. They've got the talent to do it. They only averaged 18 points per game last season, but there is a lot of hype surrounding their new quarterback in Dylan Raiola. A lot of hype surrounding him. Got a great arm, very accurate, dangerous passer. They're hyping him up in Lincoln for a reason. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. No doubt about it. Gabe Ervin returns at running back. Suffered an injury early last year, but is back. 3 of their top 4 pass catchers do return, and they have some quality transfers. Guys like Jamal Banks in from Wake Forest. Guys like Isaiah Nair in from Texas. And then they have 8 of their top 10 players returning on the offensive line. So we've got a deep rotation, a team that should be better in the pass protection. So this is a Nebraska team, guys, that 18 points per game last year was horrendous. Should easily eclipse, I think, 24 points per game. They can improve by almost a touchdown per game, and that could be good enough to get them back into a bowl game. Defense, it's good. It's what kept Nebraska in so many games last year. It's what almost led them to a bowl game last year. 8 starters are back after giving up just 18.3 points per game, only 304 yards per game, and only 93 rushing yards per game. They were stingy up front on the defensive line, stingy in their front 7, and will be once again this year. 3 of their top 4 tacklers do return, led by Isaac Gifford, who had 86 tackles last year. Jamari Butler returns after 5.5 sacks last season, as does Tommy Hill, who had 4 interceptions last year. And that's just naming a couple of the big standout players. The defensive line, we mentioned Butler, we mentioned Ty Robinson back up front as well. Going to be a very dangerous defensive line once again. And I think this is a team that's going to be able to bottle up the run if their secondary takes a bit of a step forward. And they weren't even all that bad last year. This Nebraska defense could be one of the best in the Big Ten. I truly mean that. You take a look at their schedule. The reason there's so much hype surrounding Nebraska, and I feel like we get this hype every year. Sometimes it's warranted, sometimes it's not. But the reason there's so much hype is because of what we saw last year, because of what they're bringing back, but because of how easy those first 7 games are. I mean, my goodness. UTEP, Colorado, Northern Iowa, Illinois, at Purdue, Rutgers, and at Indiana. Those are the first 7 games. Are you kidding me? The toughest games in that stretch are what? Colorado and Rutgers probably, both of which Nebraska gets to host. A lot of people are expecting the Cornhuskers maybe clinch bowl eligibility before their first bye week. They're probably going to be favored in all 7 of those games, so a 7-0, 6-1 start really isn't out of the question. It really isn't. But we've heard this story before. We've seen this story before. Nebraska typically falls short. So what's going to happen this year? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I think they cruise past UTEP, and I do think they beat Colorado, their first true test of the year. Last year got torched by the Buffaloes in Boulder. Lost 36-14, outgained by 113 yards. Despite Nebraska's defense doing a great job with 8 sacks on the day, the offense let them down. The offense turned the ball over 4 times. Those 4 turnovers led to 17 points for Colorado. Nebraska also missed a field goal on the day. They turned the ball over on downs twice, even though those were later on in the game when the game was pretty much out of reach. So Nebraska shot themselves in the foot a lot last year. Colorado deserved to win that game. They played a great game, but if Nebraska had had a more competent offense, that game would have been a lot closer and maybe a game they could have won. Now the game's in Lincoln. The offense drastically improved. We expect that. We know that. The defense, about the same. Colorado added a lot of transfers in, sure, but how quickly do they gel in week 2? Their Buffalo's problem was their defense. The Buffalo's problem was their battle in the trenches, the line of scrimmage. They weren't very good up front. Nebraska dominates this game at the line of scrimmage once again. The offense finally comes through, doesn't make nearly as many mistakes, and the Cornhuskers get the win over the Buffaloes. They are 2-0, make them 3-0 with a win over Northern Iowa, make them 4-0 with a win over Illinois, who they beat 20-7 last year on the road. And while the Fighting Illini might be a little improved and will flirt with a bowl, they do not have enough to come in to Lincoln and win this game. They go on the road to Purdue, who Nebraska won against 31-14 last year. Maybe a trap game a little bit because the Boilermakers do return plenty of talent in year 2 under Ryan Walters, but Nebraska is better on both sides of the ball. The one thing they don't own is home field advantage that will overcome that. So they win that game. They've already matched last year's win total, 5-0, probably a nationally ranked team at this point. And then they're home against Rutgers. A win gets them to the postseason already, halfway through the season. A loss, they still got areas that they can get a couple wins, but they're not going to have to stress. You're not going to see a repeat of last year where it's like, hey, we're 5-3, only needs one more win. Can we get there? And they fail. They're not going to have to worry about that because they will beat Rutgers at home. I like this Rutgers team a lot, but this is homecoming for Nebraska. Nebraska owns, to me, the big-time offensive edge. And what's Rutgers good at? They're good at playing defense, and this will be a low-scoring game, but they're good at running the ball. The Big Ten's leading rusher, Kyle Monangai, does return. The problem is he's now going up against one of the best defensive lines in the conference, and a Nebraska team that only allowed 93 rushing yards per game last year. So, all that being said, Rutgers, if they want to win on the road, has to deliver through the air with their new quarterback, Ethan Kaliak-Manis. I don't think he can deliver. Nebraska's defense does the job. Home field advantage does the job. The fans can feel it. The media can feel it. They get the job done. 6-0 for Nebraska, and the streak is over. The curse is broken. Nebraska will be back in the postseason. But that's not good enough, right? They're 6-0 heading into their bye week after a very favorable schedule. They're like, look, we're 6-0, but now we've got our sights on maybe a Big Ten title, a playoff appearance, 12 teams now. Or at least just a very good bowl game. We don't want to get to 6-0, become complacent, and then lose our last 6. I can assure you that's not going to happen because coming out of the bye week, I think they beat Indiana. Barely. I like this Indiana team a lot, too. A lot of talent coming back. Curt Cignetti has never had a losing season in his coaching career and now brings in a loaded Indiana squad. Tons of transfers, but a lot of them coming in from James Madison, where the Dukes were phenomenal last year under Cignetti. So this is an Indiana team that's very, very dangerous, but I like Nebraska coming off a week of rest in this game. It's a trap game because Indiana's good, because they've got home field advantage, but also because Ohio State's on the horizon. That big-time potential top 15 showdown maybe against Ohio State. I don't think Nebraska fully overlooks them. The Indiana game's closer than you think, but they do survive, which means you've got a potential 7-0 Nebraska team against a possibly undefeated Ohio State team, or maybe a one-loss Ohio State team, because remember, the Buckeyes will have played Oregon a couple weeks prior to this game. But regardless, a huge, huge matchup in Columbus on October 26th. Now, here's the thing. Nebraska doesn't stand a chance in this game. They just don't. Because of how weak the schedule is, this game is going to get overblown, it's going to get overhyped, and Nebraska will get it handed to them in Columbus against one of the best teams in the entire country. A team that owns a significant offensive edge over them, a team that arguably has the best defense in the country this year, and a team that has home field advantage, one of the most difficult places to play in the entire country. This game gives me 2019 vibes, right? Back in 2019, Nebraska was a preseason top 25 team. You looked at the schedule. It was like, hey, we might have an unbeaten showdown against Ohio State early in the year. Nebraska screwed that up by losing to Colorado. But still, the Cornhuskers were still 3-1. They were getting to host Ohio State, and they lost 48-7. Wasn't even close. I think it's the same thing here. Because the schedule is so weak, Nebraska might get overblown a little bit, but they're nowhere near being on the same level against some of the top teams in the Big Ten. They fall to Ohio State handily, but bounce back before their second bye week and do beat UCLA at home. I don't think they're too hungover. after their first loss of the year. I think Matt Rule rallies his troops. UCLA making a pretty lengthy road trip out to Lincoln. I think they get the job done over a Bruins squad that's under a new coach and a lot of changes, and I think, unfortunately, is going to struggle quite a bit in 2024. So they beat the Bruins. They've got 8 wins. They are 8-1 heading into their final 3 games of the year. 8-1, still in college football playoff contention. 8-1, still probably a top 25 team because their only loss was to Ohio State. So everything is looking great for Nebraska, except when they come out of the bye, look at how tough those games are. At USC, Wisconsin, at Iowa. I'm going to tell you right now, I think Nebraska loses all 3 of those games. And I know that's harsh. I know. But on the road at USC, long road trip for them out to California. And while his defense will be very good for Nebraska, can the secondary contain that passing attack of USC led by Miller Moss and an improving USC defense that has a new coordinator and 9 starters back? I think the Trojans will surprise a little bit in 2024. They have enough to beat Nebraska despite the Cornhuskers coming off that week of rest. They come back home and take on Wisconsin on Senior Day. It's really hard for me to pick Nebraska to win this game when they've lost 9 straight to Wisconsin and are just 1-11 against the Badgers in Big Ten play. Last year they lost 24-17. It was close, but Wisconsin, inconsistent, beaten up with injuries. This wasn't a good first year under Luke Fickell. Now they add Tyler Van Dyke. They have an elite defense once again. I got to go with the Badgers until Nebraska can prove me wrong. I got to go with the Badgers until Nebraska can prove to me that they can beat Wisconsin. So gonna side with Luke Fickell's squad here. And then on the road at Iowa, last year Nebraska, fighting for their bowl lives, looked like they might get there, but had a heartbreaking 13-10 loss to their rivals. They've lost 8 of the last 9 to the Hawkeyes, and now they are back on the road at Kinnick Stadium facing an Iowa team that will have one of the best defenses in the country, has 18 starters back, and should finally have a better offense with Cade McNamara fully healthy and a new offensive coordinator in Tim Lester. Iowa, I'm not saying it's going to go on to win the Natty or go to the playoff or anything like that, but they own Nebraska as of right now. They still own the edge with home field advantage and defense over Nebraska, just like they've had many of these other years. They really have never owned the offensive edge, and they've still gotten the job done, and they'll do it once again to make it 9 of the last 10 in favor of the Hawkeyes. But, guys, that's a disappointing finish, no doubt about it. That's unfortunate, no doubt about it. But 8-4, come on! 8-4 for Nebraska. Haven't been to a bowl since 2016. Matt Rule's going to get them there, I think, before their first bye week. He's going to get them there in the first 6 games. This is going to be a fantastic year for Nebraska. They're going to take that major signature leap in year 2 under Matt Rule. And if you look at what he's done at other schools, year 3 at Temple, won 10 games. Year 3 at Baylor, they were contending for the college football playoff. Year 3 at Nebraska could be even better and kind of on the same track as those other 2 programs. But regardless, a massive year for Nebraska. They've got the talent. They've got the schedule. They finally take advantage of it. They finally win the close games. And the Cornhuskers will be back in the postseason. And Matt Rule will be building something special in Lincoln. This is just the beginning. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to those expert picks and those weekly newsletters. Do not miss out on those, guys. We want you to take advantage for all that exclusive content and to become a member of our GE Nation. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.